All right, let's dive in. Today, we're cracking the code of flirting, and specifically, how to read those subtle signs from women.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
Right. Ever catch yourself wondering, like, is she just being friendly, or is there something more there?
Yeah, deciphering those signals can be tricky.
Exactly. So today, we're going to equip you with a flirting decoder ring to unlock those mysteries. We've got this list of 25 common signs. Some are super obvious, but others, well, let's just say they might surprise you.
Well, I'm all ears. What kind of source material are we working with?
We found this fascinating article. It's called 25 Signs She's Flirting with You. We'll link to it in the show notes.
Great. I'm always curious to see how these lists play out in the real world.
Me too. Now, what's so cool about flirting is it's like this delicate dance, right?
Yeah, it's about showing interest, but also protecting yourself at the same time. A balance that's been honed over, like, centuries.
Exactly. It's like this ancient code, this secret language of attraction. Okay, I'm already hooked.
Me too. So let's decode. What are some of the signs that stood out to you?
Well, some are pretty straightforward, like compliments or asking if you're single. But there are others that are way more subtle.
Ooh, I like subtle. Gives you something to think about, analyze.
Right. The ones that really grabbed my attention were proximity and voice changes.
Ah, excellent choices.
Mhm.
It's not just about being physically close. It's about actively creating that closeness.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, picture this. You're in a room full of people, but she always ends up near you somehow. Like she's drawn to your orbit, or maybe she finds little excuses to, like, brush against you ever so slightly.
Okay, I'm starting to see the picture here. But what about voice changes? We all get a little more expressive when we're excited. How can you tell it's because she's into you specifically?
That's where the concept of clusters comes in. One sign on its own might not mean much, but when you see several of them happening together, it starts to paint a clearer picture.
Clusters. Okay, I like that. So, like, how would that work with voice changes?
Let's say her voice gets softer or higher when she's talking to you. And you also notice she's leaning in, making eye contact, maybe even mirroring your body language. That combination is a pretty strong indicator she's flirting.
Mirroring. What's that all about? Is that like when I catch myself using my girlfriend's slang, does that mean I'm flirting with her?
Uh-huh. It might. But in this context, mirroring is more about, like, subtle subconscious physical cues. You shift your position, she does the same. You cross your legs, she follows suit. It's a sign of connection. Actually, it's linked to something called the chameleon effect, which plays a big role in building rapport.
Wow, I had no idea. Okay, so it's not just about those grand gestures, it's about these subtle subconscious signals. Man, this is really making me rethink how I interpret things. Okay, so we're learning to look for patterns, not just one-off things, but let's be honest, some of these signs can be super confusing. Like, what about laughing at jokes that aren't even funny?
We've all been there.
Right. Is that genuine attraction or just being polite? I've definitely told my share of bad jokes.
We all have. But think about the context. Is she laughing at everyone's jokes? Or just yours?
Good point.
And again, look for those clusters. Is the laughter combined with eye contact? A light touch on your arm? Maybe even a playful teasing remark? That combination helps you read the situation more accurately.
So it's like piecing together a puzzle, right? You're looking for those clues that fit together to form a bigger picture.
Exactly. It's like a detective novel for social interactions.
Uh-huh. I like that analogy. Okay, so this flirting decoder ring is starting to take shape. Now, there's one sign on this list that seems, I don't know, particularly loaded.
Oh, which one is that?
Glancing at lips. Come on, that's got to be a clear sign,
It
right?
can be. But we're talking about those quick, almost unconscious glances, not like staring someone down. It's that split-second look that suggests, I wonder what it would be like to kiss those lips.
Okay, things just got a little more interesting.
Right. It's all about those subtle hints. Now, what about licking or biting lips?
That's on the list too, and that seems, I don't know, even more suggestive.
It can be a powerful signal, for sure. But remember, everyone has their own little quirks. Some people lick their lips when they're nervous, or, just because their lips feel a little dry.
True, true. So context is key, yet again.
Always. If she's biting her lip while making eye contact, leaning in, and you've noticed other flirting signs, then yeah, it's probably safe to say there's some attraction there. But don't jump to conclusions based on just one gesture.
Right, avoid jumping the gun. So we're learning to read the whole picture, not just focus on one detail. This is really helping me understand those nuances. But before we go any further, I think it's important to bring in a note of caution here, right?
Absolutely. These signs, they're not foolproof. Every person is unique. What might be flirting for one person could just be friendly behavior for another.
So how can our listener avoid misreading these signals and landing in an awkward situation?
Well, first and foremost, pay attention to the overall vibe. Are you in a setting where flirting is even appropriate?
Right, like a business meeting versus a party, for example.
Exactly. And do you have a sense of mutual chemistry? Are you picking up on positive vibes from this person?
Okay, so it's about the whole package, not just one isolated signal.
Precisely. And most importantly, respect boundaries. Just because someone shows a few flirting signals doesn't mean they're ready to jump into a relationship.
That's such a crucial point. Enthusiasm is great, but respect always comes first.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so we've talked about some subtle signs, but this list also has some that are more direct, like straight up asking about your relationship status. Is that, I don't know, bold or just practical?
It really depends on the person and the situation. Some people are just naturally direct. They see no need for games. Others might find it too forward, especially early on.
Okay, so directness can be a sign, but you gotta read the room.
Exactly. Read the room, read the person, and trust your gut.
Okay, noted. What about accidentally bumping into you? Is that intentional flirting or just clumsiness?
Again, context is everything. If it happens once, could be an accident. But if she keeps bumping into you, especially if it comes with, laughter or eye contact or a playful touch, then yeah, it's probably deliberate.
All right, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a real masterclass in flirting here. We've covered subtle signs, direct moves, the importance of context, and of course, respect. But before we wrap up this part of our dive, I want to talk about one more sign that really stood out to me. Sharing inside jokes or personal moments.
Ah, yes. Creating those little connections that feel special to just the two of you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you're creating your own little world, even if it's just a shared glance or a silly inside joke. Those little things can really spark a connection.
Shows you're paying attention.
Yeah.
Remembering the things that are important to her. That kind of attentiveness. Incredibly attractive.
It's not about the grand gestures. It's about those small, meaningful moments. I love that. But hold on, we've covered a lot of ground here. I think it's time for a quick pause.
Agreed. We've been diving deep.
We've explored subtle signs, overt moves, the importance of context, and of course, respect. But there's still so much more to uncover in this fascinating world of flirting.
In the next part, we'll delve into the why behind these behaviors, the psychology of flirting, and explore some common misinterpretations.
Oh, misinterpretations. Yeah, I've definitely made a few of those in my time.
We all have, so we'll help you avoid those pitfalls, give you even more tools for navigating this complex dance of attraction.
All right, sounds good. So stick around because things are about to get even more interesting.
Can't wait. Welcome back to our deep dive into, well, the subtle art of flirting.
We've already uncovered a whole treasure trove of signs, from fleeting glances to those more overt moves.
Right. It's amazing how much information we pack into these seemingly small gestures.
It is, but now I'm really curious about the why behind these behaviors, like what's going on beneath the surface.
Ah, the million-dollar question.
Right. Why are these signs often so subtle? Wouldn't it just be easier if everyone came right out and said how they felt?
Well, imagine a world where flirting was always direct. It might clear up some confusion,
Yeah?
but it could also lead to, a lot of awkwardness and bruised egos.
Ooh, good point.
Remember, flirting is a dance, right? It's a delicate balance between expressing interest and protecting yourself from potential, rejection.
So it's like a safety mechanism. You're putting those feelers out there, but not fully exposing yourself until you get a sense that the feeling is mutual.
Precisely. And this ties into, the evolutionary psychology of flirting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Well, think about it. Back in the day, our ancestors couldn't just swipe right or slide into DMs, right?
Haha, no Tinder in the Stone Age.
Right. They had to rely on subtle cues to gauge interest and avoid, potentially dangerous situations.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here.
You wouldn't want to risk getting rejected by, the leader of the tribe,
Or worse.
right? Or attracting, a saber-toothed tiger while you're trying to impress someone.
Uh-huh.
So these subtle signs evolved as a way to test the waters safely. See if there's a spark without risking too much.
So it's not just about playing game or being coy. It's actually rooted in our biology, our survival instincts. Wow, that completely changes my perspective.
It does, right. And it helps explain why those seemingly insignificant gestures, The lingering touch, the softened voice, the mirroring of movements, they can hold so much meaning.
Okay, I get that now. But how can you tell the difference between genuine flirting and just being friendly? I feel like that line can get really blurry sometimes.
It can be tricky, but remember that all-important context. Consider the setting, the overall vibe, and your past interactions with this person. Are they generally flirty with everyone, or are these behaviors specifically toward you?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So if someone's like super touchy-feely with everyone they meet, it might not mean the same thing as when someone who's usually more reserved makes a point of touching your arm during a conversation.
Exactly. And remember those clusters we talked about? One sign on its own might not be conclusive, but seeing several together gives you a much clearer picture.
Right. Those clusters are key. I'm starting to get this. But I gotta admit, I still feel like I could easily misinterpret things. What are some, common traps that people fall into when trying to decode these flirting signals?
One common mistake is reading too much into a single sign. Just because someone smiles at you doesn't mean they're head over heels in love.
Yeah.
They could just be being polite.
Right. So avoid jumping to conclusions based on one isolated gesture. Got it. What else?
Another pitfall is overlooking, individual personality differences. Some people are naturally more expressive, outgoing,
Yeah.
while others are more reserved.
Right. So a naturally bubbly person might touch your arm a lot in conversation, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're flirting.
Exactly, it might just be part of their normal communication style. And on the flip side, a shy person might be sending you subtle signals that you totally missed because you're expecting something more overt.
This is making me realize how much we rely on assumptions and stereotypes when we're interpreting social cues. We need to be more mindful of individual differences.
Absolutely. And remember, communication is a two-way street. If you're unsure about someone's intentions, the best approach is to be, open and honest in your own communication.
So instead of agonizing over whether that lingering eye contact means they're smitten, maybe just ask them a question about themselves or suggest getting coffee sometime.
Exactly. Putting yourself out there in a respectful and genuine way.
Yeah.
Always a better strategy than overanalyzing every little sign.
I love that advice. It takes the pressure off trying to be a mind reader, and it encourages actual open communication, which is always a good thing.
Now, there's one more potential trap I want to mention.
Oh.
The danger of projecting your own desires onto someone else's behavior.
Ooh, that's a good one. So if you're really hoping someone is flirting with you, you might be more likely to see what you want to see, even if it's not really there.
Precisely. Our brains are wired to seek out patterns, make sense of the world. And sometimes that means we see what we're looking for, even if it's not objectively there.
So how can we avoid falling into that trap?
First, be honest with yourself about your own feelings and motivations. Are you genuinely interested in this person?
Yeah.
Or are you just looking for, validation? And second, be open to the possibility that they might not be interested.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Not every interaction has to lead to romance.
That's such a crucial point. It's important to be realistic and respect the other person's feelings, even if it's not, the outcome you were hoping for.
Exactly. And remember, even if someone isn't flirting with you, it doesn't mean you're not interesting or attractive. It just means that, this particular connection might not be a romantic one.
Right. Okay. So we've talked about the importance of context, individual differences, and avoiding projection. Is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind when trying to, decipher these flirting signals?
One final thought. Don't forget the power of intuition. We humans, we're social creatures. We've evolved to pick up on subtle cues. Energy. If you have a gut feeling that someone is flirting with you, there's a good chance you're right. But if something feels off, or you're getting mixed signals, it's always best to err on the side of caution and respect.
Love that. So trust your gut, but also be respectful and mindful of boundaries. That's a winning combination.
Absolutely. And remember, even with all the knowledge in the world, flirting is still an art, not a science. There will always be some mystery, some uncertainty, and that's part of what makes it so exciting.
Well said. Now, I know we've got a whole list of 25 signs to cover, and we've already spent a good amount of time dissecting the nuances of flirting. But I want to circle back to a few specific signs that really caught my attention. One of them was playing with hair. Is that really a reliable indicator of flirting, or could it just be a nervous habit?
It's often a combination of both. You see, when we're attracted to someone, our bodies release all these hormones. And those hormones can make us feel, a little jittery, self-conscious, Playing with our hair, adjusting our clothes, fidgeting it can be a way of, like, releasing that nervous energy.
So it's not necessarily a conscious decision to flirt, it's more like a subconscious response to feeling attracted.
Exactly. It's our body betraying our feelings, even if we're trying to play it cool.
That's fascinating. So if you see someone constantly twirling their hair or like adjusting their shirt while they're talking to you, it might be a sign that they're feeling a little flustered. In a good way, of course.
Precisely. Now, another sign that I find particularly intriguing is blushing. I mean, that's something you can't really fake, right?
Yeah, blushing is like a dead giveaway. But doesn't everyone blush when they're embarrassed? How can you tell if it's a sign of attraction versus just like awkwardness?
Again, context is your guide. If someone blushes after you compliment them, or you notice a rosy hue creeping up their neck when you make eye contact, that's a pretty strong indication they're feeling, flustered by your attention.
So it's about paying attention to when and why the blushing occurs. If it happens in response to your interactions, more likely to be a sign of attraction. If they just spilled their coffee all over themselves, maybe not so much.
Exactly. Now, there's one more sign I want to discuss that often gets misinterpreted. Fidgeting, or fixing appearance.
Ooh, that one seems tricky. I mean, I definitely fidget when I'm like bored or uncomfortable. How can you tell if someone is fixing their appearance because they're attracted to you or just because they're, generally self-conscious?
It's about looking for a change in their behavior. Do they suddenly become like hyper aware of their appearance when you enter the room? Do they start, adjusting their clothes, smoothing their hair, checking their reflection more frequently?
So it's not just about the act of fidgeting itself, it's about whether there's a noticeable shift in their behavior when you're around. If they suddenly become more aware of their appearance, could be a sign they're trying to impress you.
Exactly. They want to put their best foot forward, both literally and figuratively.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. From the evolutionary psychology of flirting to the importance of context, individual differences, I feel like we've given our listener a real toolkit for decoding these sometimes tricky social signals.
And don't forget about those pitfalls we discussed, those common misinterpretations. Hopefully our listeners will be able to avoid those now.
Right. But before we move on, I want to make sure we address one, crucial aspect. Respecting boundaries. We've touched on this throughout our conversation, but I think it's worth reiterating.
Absolutely. No matter how many flirting signals you pick up on, it's essential to remember that everyone has the right to set their own boundaries and to feel safe and respected.
Right.
Just because someone displays some signs of flirting doesn't mean they're obligated to, reciprocate your advances or take things further than they're comfortable with.
That's so important. Enthusiasm is great, but it should never come at the expense of someone else's, comfort or autonomy.
Exactly. Always err on the side of caution and respect. If you're unsure about someone's boundaries, simply ask. Open communication, key to navigating any social interaction, especially when it comes to flirting.
Well said. So read those signals, trust your gut, but always prioritize respect and open communication. I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners.
I agree. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to pose a question to our listener. Thinking back on your own experiences, have you ever, misattributed friendly behavior for flirting or vice versa? How did you navigate that situation?
Ooh, that's a great question to ponder. I think we've all had those moments of, miscommunication or misinterpretation when it comes to social cues. It's part of being human, right?
It is. And those experiences can teach us so much about ourselves, about the other person, and about the complexities of, human interaction.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on for this part of our deep dive.
In the final part, we'll tackle the remaining signs on our list, explore some additional tips for interpreting those flirting signals, and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder.
All right, looking forward to it. So stay tuned because we're not done decoding just yet. All right, final part of our flirting deep dive. It's been quite the journey exploring the subtle world of attraction. We've uncovered those hidden signals, learned about the context, and even, dug into the psychology behind it all. I feel like I've leveled up my flirting game for sure.
That's the goal. And we've still got a few more insights to uncover. Remember that list of 25 common flirting signs? We've got some real gems left, ones that might surprise you.
Okay, bring 'em on. I'm ready for those last pieces of the puzzle. What intriguing signs have you got for us today?
Well, one sign that often flies under the radar is, initiating conversations. Might seem obvious, but think about it. If someone is always finding reasons to talk to you, Whether it's striking up a conversation in person or sending that first text, it shows they're thinking about you, want to engage.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like they're making that effort, to stay connected, keep that line of communication open.
Exactly.
And it doesn't always have to be about like witty banter or deep topics, right?
Right. Sometimes it's those simple check-ins, those "how was your day" texts, those speak volumes. It's about making the effort, even in small ways.
So it's not just what they're saying, but the fact that they're reaching out at all. It's that initiative that speaks volumes. Okay, what other subtle signs should we be on the lookout for?
Another one that often gets misconstrued is teasing. Now, not all teasing is flirtatious, of course. Depends on the tone, the context, the overall dynamic.
Yeah, I can see how that one would be tricky to decipher. I mean, I tease my friends all the time. Obviously not meant to be romantic. So how can you tell if someone is teasing you because they're actually into you?
Pay attention to the delivery. Is it playful, lighthearted, or does it feel, I don't know, mean-spirited or cutting? Is there a twinkle in their eye when they tease you? Or an edge to their voice? And remember, those clusters. If the teasing is combined with laughter, eye contact, other flirtatious gestures, then it's more likely to be a sign of attraction.
Okay, so playful, good-natured teasing, that's the green light. But if it feels, I don't know, uncomfortable or hurtful, that's a big red flag.
Got it. What other clues should we add to our decoder rings?
Here's one that's often overlooked but reveals a lot. Asking personal questions. Now, this doesn't mean, grilling you about your deepest fears on a first date, but it does suggest a genuine interest in getting to know you on a deeper level.
So instead of just sticking to small talk about the weather, they're asking about your passions, your dreams, your experiences. They actually want to know what makes you you. Exactly. Shows they're curious about you as a person, and they're paying attention to what you're saying. That level of interest can be incredibly attractive.
It's like they're saying, I see you, I'm interested in you, and I want to learn more.
Right. It goes beyond those surface level conversations. Shows a desire to build a more, meaningful bond. Now, keep in mind, not everyone's comfortable diving into those deep conversations right away. Some people take more time to open up, and that's totally okay. But if you notice someone consistently asking thoughtful questions and really listening to your responses, it's a good sign.
This is all making so much sense. I feel like I've unlocked a whole new level of understanding when it comes to flirting. But before we wrap things up, there's one last piece of the puzzle I want to address. What happens when you get mixed signals? We've talked about looking for those clusters, but what if some signs point to yes, while others seem to scream no? That can be so confusing.
It absolutely can, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer. Sometimes people send mixed signals because, well, they're genuinely conflicted about their own feelings, They might be attracted to you, but also hesitant for all sorts of reasons. Maybe they're shy, unsure about their own availability, worried about complications.
So it's not always a deliberate attempt to, play games or lead someone on. It could just be a reflection of their own uncertainty.
Right. And other times, people might send mixed signals unintentionally because they're simply unaware of how their actions are coming across.
Yeah.
They might be naturally touchy-feely or have a flirtatious personality, but not actually, have any romantic intentions.
Okay, so mixed signals can stem from a lot of different factors: internal conflict, unintentional behavior, even just, plain old awkwardness. How can our listener navigate those murky waters without driving themselves crazy with overthinking?
First and foremost, trust your intuition. We're wired to pick up on those subtle cues, energy shifts. If something feels off, if you're sensing hesitation, inconsistency, trust that instinct. Proceed with caution.
So don't ignore those red flags, even if you're really hoping for a green light.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to have an open and honest conversation. If you're feeling confused, unsure about someone's intentions, the best approach, simply ask.
I love that. It takes the pressure off trying to be a mind reader, encourages direct communication. But how do you approach that conversation without, coming across as accusatory or needy?
Frame it from a place of, genuine curiosity, respect. You can say something like, hey, I've been really enjoying our conversations lately, and I'm sensing, a bit of a connection. Just wanted to check in and see if you're feeling it too.
Wow, that's a great example. It's direct, but also respectful, leaves room for them to share their perspective without feeling, put on the skin.
Exactly. And remember, their response, whatever it may be, is valuable information. If they reciprocate your feelings, fantastic. If not, you can gracefully move on without wasting time and energy on a connection that's not meant to be.
That's such an important reminder. Sometimes, the hardest part of deciphering those flirting signals is accepting that, well, not every connection is going to turn into something romantic, but that's okay.
It is.
It doesn't diminish your worth or attractiveness. It just means that, this particular spark wasn't meant to ignite.
And who knows? Maybe that conversation will open the door to a wonderful friendship instead.
Well said. All right, I think we've officially covered everything on a flirting decoding agenda today. Subtle signs, overt signs, the importance of context, the power of intuition, and of course, open communication. I feel like I could go out there and read the world like a human polygraph.
I have no doubt you will. And remember, the most important thing is to approach these interactions with, curiosity, respect, and a healthy dose of humor. Flirting should be fun.
Absolutely. It's all about that spark of connection, that playful banter, that sense of, excitement and possibility. And even if things don't always go as planned, every interaction is an opportunity to learn, to grow. So to all our listeners out there, go forth and decode those signals with confidence and grace.
And remember, the world of nonverbal communication, it's vast, it's fascinating. Keep exploring, keep observing, keep learning. There's always more to discover.
That's a wrap on our flirting deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed this journey into, the subtle art of attraction. Until next time, keep those decoder rings polished and those hearts open to new possibilities.